She was just 8 years old, and most days she spent in a small house with her family, laughing and playing like any other child. Her mornings were filled with simple routines: getting dressed, having breakfast with her parents, and walking to school with a backpack that seemed almost too heavy for her small shoulders. She loved school because it was full of friends and games, but she always felt a little different when it came to music. While other children would hum a song or clap their hands, she would stop, listen, and try to remember every note perfectly in her head. It started in the living room one quiet afternoon. The sun was streaming through the windows, making patterns on the wooden floor. She sat on the rug, her fingers drumming gently on the edge of the coffee table. Her mother was reading a book on the couch, and her father was fixing something in the kitchen. The sound she made was soft, almost like she was talking to herself, but there was a rhythm to it, something natural and almost magical. Her mother looked up and smiled. "You have a good sense of rhythm," she said. The girl blushed and went back to her little tapping game, unaware that she was about to discover something that would change her life. By chance, a neighbor had an old upright piano in their living room. One afternoon, while playing outside, she wandered inside when the door was open. The piano was tall and imposing, black with a shiny surface that reflected the sunlight. Her fingers hovered over the keys before she touched them, pressing lightly at first. A sound came out, uneven and a little squeaky, but her eyes lit up. She pressed another key, and then another, experimenting with different combinations. She didn't know any songs, but the sounds made her happy, and she tried to repeat the same pattern again and again. The neighbor, a kind older woman, watched quietly from the corner. She had seen many children play with the piano, but this one was different. The girl didn't just press keys randomly. She seemed to listen carefully to each note, adjusting her fingers as if she could feel the music through her hands. When the girl finally stopped, the woman clapped gently. "You have a gift, you know?" she said softly. The girl shook her head shyly and smiled, unsure what she had done that was so special. Back at home, the piano stayed on her mind. She started drawing pictures of it in her notebook, practicing imaginary songs on her little toy keyboard, and humming melodies she made up herself. Every spare moment she had, she would hum or tap rhythms on tables, chairs, or even the floor. Her parents began to notice that she was different. It wasn't just that she loved music, but that she seemed to understand it in a way that surprised them. Songs she had heard only once would come back to her perfectly. Even when she tried to play simple tunes on a small keyboard they bought for her, she would correct her mistakes by herself without anyone helping. School was a mixture of normal days and small adventures in music. She would sit quietly during lessons, but whenever the music class started, she became the center of attention. Her classmates were amazed at how she could remember songs quickly, and the teacher often encouraged her to play in front of the class. Sometimes she would play softly, barely pressing the keys, but the room would feel different. Other children would stop talking, and even the teacher would pause and listen, as if something magical was happening. At home, the family began to discuss what to do. The girl's parents had always wanted her to be happy, and they noticed how much joy music brought to her. They started saving money to buy her a proper piano, even though it meant making small sacrifices. They talked about music lessons, competitions, and performances, but mostly they just wanted her to enjoy herself. They knew she had talent, but they also knew that pushing too hard could take away the happiness that music gave her. The first piano arrived on a rainy afternoon. The delivery men carefully placed it in the living room. She ran to it as soon as they left, her tiny fingers trembling with excitement. She pressed a key, then another, and suddenly she was lost in the music. She didn't know any proper songs yet, but she played with the keys, creating sounds that were soft and sweet, some even surprising her parents with their harmony. The piano had become a new friend, something she could explore and talk to through her fingers. The neighbors started noticing too. When she played from the window, soft melodies would drift into the street. People passing by would stop and listen, some smiling, some whispering to each other about how talented the little girl was. Her mother and father watched from the kitchen, hearts swelling with pride. They knew that she was special, but the world seemed to notice it as well. As the months passed, her love for the piano grew. She would wake early just to play before school and stay up a little later just to practice new patterns she had learned. She didn't follow books or formal instructions. She listened and remembered, creating melodies from her imagination and from songs she had heard once. Her fingers moved quickly and lightly, dancing across the keys. Each note was a new discovery, each melody a small adventure. Sometimes she would stop and just smile, feeling proud of what she could do. Teachers at school began to ask her to play during events and small gatherings. Her parents were careful to support her without forcing her, making sure she had fun and stayed a child. They encouraged her curiosity, her creativity, and her love for music. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about letting her talent shine naturally. One day, the local community center announced a small music competition for children. Her parents hesitated at first, worried she might feel nervous, but the girl insisted. She wanted to try not for the prize, but to see how it felt to play in front of others. She practiced for hours, her little hands growing stronger, her memory sharper. She experimented with dynamics, playing softly in some parts and louder in others, learning how music could express feelings. She hummed along, tapping her foot, completely absorbed in the experience. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. The girl woke early, excitement mixed with nerves. Her parents helped her get ready, reassuring her that the most important thing was to enjoy herself. She walked into the hall, her small fingers brushing against the piano keys, taking a deep breath. When she began to play, the audience leaned forward. Her music was gentle, yet confident, flowing in a way that was surprising for someone her age. People were moved, some even holding back tears. The jury, composed of local music teachers and performers, watched in silence, completely captivated. By the end of the performance, the room was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. The girl's cheeks were flushed with excitement, her eyes sparkling. She had played not for recognition, but for the love of music, and that honesty shone through. The jury, stunned, whispered among themselves, amazed by the depth of talent from such a young child. Returning home, she hugged her parents tightly, feeling proud and happy. They sat together in the living room, the piano nearby, and talked about how far she had come. It was more than just playing notes. It was about discovering a world that belonged to her, where she could express feelings, tell stories, and share joy. Music had become her voice, and even at 8 years old, she had already found something remarkable. From that day on, she continued to explore, practice, and play. Each day brought new sounds, new melodies, and new adventures. The small girl with a big talent had taken her first steps into a world that was larger than she could imagine, and everyone who heard her play knew they were witnessing something rare and beautiful. The discovery of her talent was just the beginning, a first spark that promised a journey filled with music, wonder, and moments that could leave anyone truly stunned. The morning was quiet, but her excitement made the air feel alive. She had been dreaming about this day for weeks, a day that felt more important than any other. Today, she was going to touch the piano in a real music hall for the first time. Her parents walked with her, holding her hands gently, and they could feel her little fingers trembling with anticipation. She did not speak much on the way, but her eyes were wide, full of curiosity and hope. When they arrived, the music hall was much bigger than she had imagined. The floor was polished and shiny, reflecting the sunlight streaming in through the tall windows. Rows of seats stretched far back, and the stage held a grand piano that looked almost magical. She approached it slowly, her small feet echoing on the wooden floor. She looked at her parents, who nodded encouragingly, and then she lifted the cover, revealing the black and white keys that seemed to glow under the light. Her fingers hovered above the keys, unsure at first, then she pressed down gently. The sound that came out was soft but full, carrying a weight that surprised her. She smiled, feeling the vibration under her fingers, and started experimenting. She pressed a few keys, then another set, creating a simple melody she had never played before. It was her own, a creation born from curiosity and instinct. The piano responded to her touch, and in that moment, She felt connected to something bigger than herself. Her parents watched from the side, amazed. They had seen her play before, at home and in small gatherings, but this was different. There was something about the space, the piano, and the sound filling the room that made her talent shine brighter. She did not rush. She took her time, feeling each note, letting the music guide her. Occasionally, she would stop, listen, and then continue, as if having a quiet conversation with the piano itself. A music teacher who was helping at the hall noticed her immediately. She had seen many children perform, but this girl was different. The way she played showed understanding, sensitivity, and creativity that was rare for someone her age. She approached quietly, careful not to interrupt. "You have a natural touch," she said softly. The girl looked up, shy, and nodded. She didn't need to speak much. Her music said everything. Practice began that week. Her parents and the teacher worked together, helping her understand basic techniques but never forcing her creativity. She learned how to position her fingers, how to move her hands smoothly, and how to control the volume. But most of all, she was encouraged to express herself. They taught her not to just play the notes but to tell a story through them. First, it was difficult. Some notes did not sound right, and sometimes she became frustrated. But each time, she would try again, determined and patient, her small face set with quiet determination. She started spending more time at the piano than before. Mornings, afternoons, evenings. She found herself drawn to it constantly. Sometimes, she would play for hours without realizing it, creating melodies from her imagination. Other times, she would mimic songs she had heard once on the radio, remembering each note perfectly. Her parents encouraged her but also made sure she had breaks, time to play outside, and moments to be just a child. They understood that her happiness was more important than speed or skill. At school, her classmates began noticing a change too. During music class, she could play songs almost immediately after hearing them. Children would gather around her, amazed, asking her how she could remember everything. She would smile shyly and demonstrate slowly, letting them watch and learn. She never made them feel less talented. Instead, she shared her joy and excitement. Teachers were impressed and sometimes asked her to perform at school events. Each performance was small, simple, but her playing captivated everyone who listened. Word started to spread in the local community. Neighbors would come by to hear her play when they heard her practicing. At first, it was a few people who stopped and listened, nodding in approval. Later, more people came, drawn by the music that seemed too full and grown up for such a young child. She was surprised by the attention but also pleased. She had never played for recognition. She played because it made her heart happy. But the smiles, the gentle applause, and the quiet awe she felt around her music encouraged her to keep exploring. Her first real challenge came when a small local competition was announced. Her parents were nervous, knowing how easily children could feel pressure. But she insisted she wanted to try. She said it was not about winning but about playing in front of others, seeing how her music could touch people. They agreed, and she began practicing seriously, with her teacher guiding her and her parents supporting her at home. She learned about timing, rhythm, and expression. She practiced slowly, repeating phrases, experimenting with how to make the music feel alive. Nervousness arrived naturally. She would bite her lip or fidget before practice sessions, worrying if she could remember everything. But the teacher reminded her that mistakes were part of learning, and that her emotions were more important than perfection. Gradually, she learned to channel her nervous energy into focus, letting her fingers move freely and her music tell a story. She felt proud with each small success. Each new phrase she learned to play confidently. The night before the competition, she could hardly sleep. Her mind was full of melodies. Some she had created herself, others borrowed from songs she loved. She lay in bed, thinking about the piano, waiting for her, imagining how it would feel to play in front of the audience. Her parents came to check on her, and she hugged them tightly. "I just want to play well," she whispered. They reassured her, telling her that she already had something very special and that she should enjoy the experience above all else. The day of the performance arrived. She woke early, dressed simply, and walked to the hall with her parents. Her hands were small but steady as she approached the grand piano. The room was full of people, and she could hear whispers, expectant and curious. Her heart beat fast, but she took a deep breath, remembering the teacher's words. She imagined herself at home, feeling the keys beneath her fingers, and slowly the tension began to fade. She started to play. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but then confidence grew, and the melody flowed naturally. She did not rush. She let the music breathe. Each note seemed to rise and fall with emotion, carrying the audience along. People leaned forward, mesmerized, as if the music spoke directly to their hearts. Even the jury, known for being difficult to impress, watched quietly, fascinated. They whispered to each other, amazed that such depth and sensitivity could come from a child so young. The performance continued, her music changing in tone and pace, soft and gentle at times, strong and bold at others. She closed her eyes occasionally, letting the music guide her. She did not think about winning or losing. She only thought about expressing herself. The audience felt it, a rare connection between the music, the player, and those who listened. Applause came slowly at first, then more fully, filling the room with warmth. She opened her eyes, blushed, and kept playing, proud and happy. When the music ended, there was a pause, and then the hall erupted with applause. She looked at her parents, their faces shining with pride. The jury was visibly impressed, murmuring words of amazement. She had done more than play. She had touched hearts. She had taken the piano and made it speak in a way that no one expected from an 8-year-old. Her cheeks were flushed with joy, and she hugged her parents tightly, feeling a sense of achievement and happiness that was entirely her own. Walking home, she kept talking softly, humming the songs she had played, her excitement bubbling over. Her parents listened, smiling, knowing that this was only the beginning. The piano had become a friend, a voice, and a world where she could explore, express, and grow. Her talent had taken her to a place she had never imagined, and everyone around her could feel the magic that was beginning to bloom. This was more than music. It was the start of a journey that promised wonder, discovery, and moments that could leave anyone truly stunned. After her first performance, life began to change in small but meaningful ways. She woke up each morning with a sense of purpose. Music was no longer just a hobby or something she enjoyed. It had become part of who she was. Every day, she would sit by her piano and explore melodies she had never thought of before. She listened carefully to each note, adjusting her fingers, finding the perfect balance, and learning to control the music with emotion and patience. Her parents watched her with a mixture of awe and worry. They were proud, of course, but they also understood that talent like hers needed care. They helped her create a schedule that balanced school, practice, and play. They didn't want pressure to overwhelm her, so they encouraged her to enjoy every moment at the piano. At times, they simply sat quietly in the room, listening, letting her explore the music freely. Sometimes she played softly, almost whispering through the keys, and other times, the music would rise boldly, filling the house with energy and life. School became a place where her reputation quietly grew. Teachers would often call her aside to play at small events or assemblies. She became known not for showing off but for her gentle and honest approach to music. Her classmates admired her skill, but she never let it make her feel separate. She shared her knowledge with anyone curious, showing them how to tap rhythms or hum melodies. She liked helping others discover the joy of music, making sure everyone could feel included and inspired. Her teacher at the music hall began to challenge her more. She introduced new concepts, simple theory, reading sheet music, and experimenting with different styles. At first, the girl struggled to keep up. Reading music on paper seemed strange compared to how she naturally played by ear. She would make mistakes, pause, and sometimes feel frustrated. But her teacher reminded her that mistakes were part of learning, and every challenge was an opportunity to grow. Slowly, she began to understand, and each small success boosted her confidence. Around this time, another competition was announced, bigger than the last. It was a regional event, drawing children from nearby towns. Her parents were nervous. They had seen how intensely she felt about music, and they didn't want the pressure to harm her love for it. But she was determined. She wanted to see how her music could reach more people. She didn't speak much about winning. She only wanted to share the melodies in her heart. Practice for this competition became more focused. She spent hours experimenting with pieces she had never tried before. Sometimes, she would make mistakes repeatedly, her little fingers slipping over the keys. Other times, she would play a section perfectly and smile in quiet triumph. Her parents and teacher encouraged her to take breaks, to walk outside, to eat well, and to sleep. They understood that her energy and happiness were as important as her skill. Her friends at school noticed how serious she had become about her music. Sometimes she would bring them to the piano at home and show them simple songs. They would clap and cheer, sometimes trying to play themselves, laughing at their mistakes. She liked these moments, as they reminded her that music could be fun and joyful, not just something serious or competitive. She never lost the sense of wonder that had first drawn her to the piano. As the competition approached, her nervousness grew. She would wake up early, worrying if she could remember everything she had practiced. Her parents reminded her to breathe, to trust her fingers, and to focus on the music rather than the audience. She listened to their advice, taking deep breaths before practice, allowing herself to feel calm and ready. She knew that her best performances happened when she was relaxed and enjoying herself. The day of the competition arrived, and the hall was grander than anything she had seen before. The stage seemed enormous, with a shiny grand piano at its center. The seats were filled with parents, teachers, and children from different towns. The air buzzed with excitement and anticipation. She felt her hands tremble slightly as she walked onto the stage, but then she remembered all the hours of practice, all the melodies she had created, and she took a deep breath. She was ready. Her performance began softly, almost as if testing the audience's ears. Then her music grew, telling a story through every note. It was playful at times, gentle at others, and sometimes strong and commanding. She closed her eyes occasionally, letting the music flow naturally, guiding her fingers across the keys. Each note felt alive, carrying emotion, energy, and honesty. The audience was captivated, leaning forward, completely absorbed by the young girl and her music. The jury, composed of experienced musicians, watched quietly. Their faces betrayed surprise and admiration. They whispered to each other, amazed by her ability to express depth and emotion beyond her years. Some had seen hundreds of children perform, but very few could evoke such feeling from a simple melody. She played not to impress, but because she needed the music to flow, and that sincerity touched everyone present. Her fingers moved with confidence, each key producing sound that was precise yet free. She experimented with dynamics, making some notes soft and others strong, showing her understanding of music as a language of emotion. Occasionally, she paused, letting the hall absorb the silence, then continued, creating contrast and depth. The audience was held in her spell, forgetting themselves, living in the music she made. When the final note faded, the room was quiet for a heartbeat. Then applause erupted, loud and heartfelt. People stood, some clapping with tears in their eyes, some whistling in delight. She smiled shyly, her cheeks pink, overwhelmed by the response. She looked toward her parents, who were beaming with pride. They had never felt such happiness, knowing that she had shared a part of herself with the world and had been recognized for it. Returning home that evening, she carried a sense of accomplishment and joy that could not be measured by trophies or certificates. She hugged her parents tightly, telling them about her performance, the reactions of the audience, and how the music had felt flowing through her. They listened, proud and attentive, understanding that this journey was more than competitions or recognition. It was about discovery, growth, and expressing what was inside her heart. Days after the competition, she continued to play as before, experimenting with new melodies and refining her skills. But something had changed. She understood that music could connect people, bring emotion to life, and leave a lasting impression. This understanding made her practice even more meaningful. She approached the piano with curiosity, patience, and excitement, learning something new every day. Sometimes she played softly, thinking deeply about each note. Other times, she played with energy, letting the joy and thrill of music fill the room. Her parents began to notice how music was shaping her in other ways too. She was more confident, more patient, and more empathetic. She listened carefully, shared generously, and approached challenges with determination. Music was teaching her lessons beyond the keys. Perseverance, creativity, and understanding that effort and passion could create something beautiful. They knew that supporting her journey required care and love, allowing her to explore her talent freely while staying grounded in happiness. At school, she became an inspiration. Children admired her not just for her talent, but for her dedication and humility. She never boasted about her skill. She shared it. Teachers noticed her growth and often asked her to play at school events, making the celebrations special with her music. She played not to receive applause, but because she enjoyed the connection music created between herself and those who listened. Her music brought warmth, joy, and a sense of wonder to everyone around her. By the end of this chapter in her life, she had learned that talent alone was not enough. Practice, patience, and heart were equally important. She continued to explore, to make mistakes, to learn from them, and to create music that reflected her feelings and imagination. The piano had become a true companion, teaching her lessons she would carry forever. Every melody was a story, every note a step in her journey, and she was ready to face the world, one key at a time, sharing her gift with those who would listen and be inspired. The day of the biggest performance yet arrived with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The hall was massive, larger than any she had seen before, with rows of seats stretching far into the distance and a grand piano sitting under the bright lights on the stage. She walked toward it slowly, her little fingers brushing the keys as she approached, feeling the smooth surface and the cool black and white keys beneath her touch. Her heart raced, but she took a deep breath, remembering all the practice, all the melodies she had created, and all the moments of joy she had felt at the piano. Her parents sat in the front row, their hands clasped together, their faces glowing with pride. They had watched her grow from a curious child, tapping rhythms on a table, to a talented musician capable of moving people with her music. They knew how much this meant to her, but they also knew that the experience should be about her love for music, not about pressure or fear. They smiled at her, giving her the reassurance she needed to focus on what mattered most. Backstage, the air was filled with anticipation. Children of all ages prepared for their performances, some calm, some fidgeting nervously. She closed her eyes for a moment, blocking out the noise, and imagined herself sitting at her piano at home, letting her fingers flow naturally. She remembered the teacher's advice. Mistakes are part of learning, and music is about expression. With that in mind, she stepped onto the stage, greeted by the quiet murmur of the audience, and positioned herself at the piano. The first note was soft, almost hesitant, but then her confidence grew. Her fingers danced across the keys, weaving melodies that were playful, tender, and sometimes bold. She played from memory and imagination, creating a piece that told a story. Each note carried emotion, and each pause allowed the audience to feel the depth of her music. People leaned forward, captivated, their eyes on the young girl whose talent seemed larger than her small frame. The jury watched in silence, their expressions hidden behind careful faces. They were experts, accustomed to evaluating performances, but something about her playing caught them off guard. It was not just skill. It was emotion, presence, and sincerity that transcended technique. She played as if the piano were an extension of herself, letting the music speak directly to the hearts of everyone listening. Their eyes widened subtly, and whispers of astonishment passed quietly among them. Her piece changed in tone, softening to a gentle whisper, then rising to strong, dramatic chords. She controlled the volume with precision, letting the melody flow naturally and freely. Occasionally, she closed her eyes, feeling the music in her heart, trusting her fingers to follow. The audience felt each note, the crescendos and diminuendos carrying feelings they could not describe. Some smiled, some held their breath, and others watched in awe, realizing that they were witnessing something rare and extraordinary. She experimented with rhythm and timing, sometimes slowing down to create tension, other times speeding up to convey excitement. Each choice was deliberate yet instinctive. She had learned over the months that music was more than notes. It was expression, storytelling, and connection. Every keystroke was a word, every melody a sentence, and the piece she played was a story unfolding in real time. People were drawn in, completely absorbed by the young girl and her music. Midway through the performance, a hush fell over the hall. Her hands moved with confidence and grace, playing notes that resonated with the audience deeply. Even the jury, who had seen countless children perform, exchanged looks of disbelief. They whispered quietly, unable to conceal their admiration. They had expected talent, perhaps skill, but the depth of emotion and understanding she displayed went beyond their expectations. She was not just playing the piano, she was communicating with everyone in the room. The climax of her piece arrived naturally. Her fingers flew across the keys with precision and energy, each note building on the last, creating a wave of sound that seemed to fill the entire hall. The music was bold, powerful, and expressive, yet controlled with a maturity that was astonishing for her age. The audience leaned forward in their seats, some holding their breath, completely immersed in the performance. The jury members' eyes were wide, and their mouths slightly open, as they watched the girl command the piano with a presence that seemed far beyond her years. As the final notes lingered in the air, she let them fade slowly, allowing the audience to absorb the music's end. For a moment there was silence, the kind of silence that is heavy with awe and disbelief. Then, as if released from a spell, the hall erupted with applause. People stood, clapping and cheering, some whistling in admiration. The energy in the room was electric, a mixture of joy, surprise, and deep appreciation. She blushed, her small frame trembling slightly from excitement and relief. She had played not to impress, but to share herself, and the audience had responded with wonder. The jury approached after the performance, their expressions a mixture of surprise and respect. They spoke softly to her parents, commenting on the depth, control, and emotion she had shown. They admitted they had rarely seen a child with such natural musicality, and they were stunned. Her parents listened quietly, their hearts full, understanding that their daughter had achieved something remarkable. It was not just about awards or recognition. It was about the impact her music had on others, the connection she had made, and the joy she had shared. Walking off the stage, she was met with hugs and smiles from her parents, who whispered their pride and encouragement. The feeling of accomplishment and happiness radiated from her as she reflected on her journey. She had taken the piano and created something that touched the hearts of everyone listening. It was a magical experience, one that she would remember forever. The music had allowed her to express herself fully, to communicate in a way that words could not, and to inspire those around her. The experience left a lasting impression on her. She understood that talent was only part of the journey, and that dedication, emotion, and heart were equally important. She had learned how music could influence, inspire, and move people, and she embraced the responsibility that came with her gift. Even at such a young age, she realized that her talent was not only for herself but also for sharing with the world. The applause, the amazed faces, and the stunned jury were proof that she had succeeded in connecting through her music. Returning home that evening, she carried a sense of fulfillment and joy that was indescribable. She hugged her parents tightly, telling them about the reactions, the applause, and the quiet moments of reflection she felt while playing. They listened with pride, understanding that this was more than just a performance. It was a milestone, a moment where her love for music, her practice, and her heart had converged to create something extraordinary. She felt proud, happy, and inspired to continue her journey. In the following days, she returned to her piano with renewed energy and excitement. She experimented with new pieces, created melodies she had never imagined, and refined her technique with joy and curiosity. Her confidence had grown, not from winning or recognition, but from understanding that she could share her inner world with others through music. Each note she played became a story, each melody a message of emotion and expression. She continued to practice with dedication, patience, and love, knowing that her journey was just beginning. Her parents noticed subtle changes as well. She became more self-assured, patient, and thoughtful. Music had not only honed her talent but also shaped her character. She approached challenges with calm determination, treated others with empathy, and embraced learning with enthusiasm. They realized that supporting her was about nurturing her spirit, allowing her to explore freely, and ensuring that her happiness remained at the center of everything. Her success inspired the community as well. People spoke about the young girl who could captivate an entire hall with her music. Children looked up to her, seeing dedication, talent, and joy in action. Teachers and neighbors admired her humility, determination, and love for music. She had become a symbol of what could be achieved through passion and effort, showing that even the youngest among us could create beauty that moved hearts. By the end of this chapter in her life, she had learned invaluable lessons. Music was not just about technique or applause. It was about emotion, expression, and connection. She had discovered that her talent could inspire, heal, and bring joy to others. Each day at the piano became an opportunity to explore, to create, and to share herself. The grand performance had left her and everyone around her stunned. But more importantly, it had taught her that music was a journey, one that would continue to unfold, filled with discovery, wonder, and the power to touch hearts. After the grand performance, life seemed to shift in quiet, meaningful ways. The applause, the admiration, and the stunned expressions of the jury were memories she carried in her heart. But she remained the same curious, joyful girl who loved music above all else. She continued to wake up each morning, eager to explore melodies on her piano, experimenting with notes and rhythms that had never existed before. The music was no longer just a part of her life. It had become the lens through which she understood the world around her. Her parents noticed how much she had grown, not just as a musician but as a person. She had become more confident and patient, more aware of her surroundings, and more empathetic toward others. She listened more carefully, offered encouragement to friends, and shared her knowledge of music without arrogance. The piano had taught her lessons beyond skill, showing her the value of practice, the beauty of persistence, and the joy of connecting with others through shared experiences. Word of her performance spread far beyond the music hall. People in her town spoke about the little girl who could make a piano sing in ways that left adults amazed. Teachers at school invited her to perform at assemblies and small celebrations, and each time, she approached the opportunity with humility and excitement. The attention never made her boastful. Instead, it inspired her to continue learning and improving, to find new melodies, and to share the magic of music with everyone around her. Her parents arranged for her to take more lessons, giving her the chance to refine her technique and explore new musical styles. She learned about different genres, tempos, and harmonies, but always returned to what mattered most: expressing herself through music. She experimented with composing small pieces, writing melodies that reflected her thoughts and feelings. Each creation was a story, a reflection of her imagination and heart, and she took joy in seeing her ideas come to life on the piano keys. Friends and classmates were inspired by her dedication and talent. Some tried to play instruments themselves, encouraged by her example. Others simply admired her perseverance and enthusiasm. She shared her time willingly, showing them simple songs, explaining rhythms, and encouraging them to explore their own creativity. Through these interactions, she realized that music was not just a personal journey, but also a way to inspire and bring people together. Local media caught wind of her talent, and small interviews followed. She spoke shyly, emphasizing that she played because she loved music and wanted to enjoy every note. People were charmed by her sincerity and passion, seeing in her a reminder that dedication, curiosity, and love for what one does can achieve extraordinary things. She never sought fame, But she understood that her talent could reach others, bringing happiness and inspiration wherever her music traveled. Over time, she began performing at more significant events. The experiences were exciting and sometimes a little nerve-wracking, but she had learned to channel her nervous energy into focus and creativity. Each stage, each audience, and each performance taught her something new about technique, emotion, or the way music could influence and touch people. She approached every opportunity with curiosity and humility, eager to grow and learn from each experience. Back at home, the piano remained her closest companion. She spent hours creating, practicing, and experimenting. Some days were playful, filled with exploration and fun melodies. Other days were serious, where she focused on perfecting a new composition or learning a challenging piece. Each day was a step in her journey, a chance to discover something new about herself and her music. Her parents watched with pride, knowing that their support had helped her reach this point, and that the most important thing was her happiness and love for what she did. Her understanding of music deepened as she matured. She learned that it was not just about playing notes perfectly, but about communicating, telling stories, and sharing feelings. Every melody she created had meaning, and every performance became a bridge connecting her with those who listened. She saw the impact her music had on people. The smiles, the quiet awe, the emotions stirred, and realized that her gift was not only for herself but also for bringing joy and inspiration to others. School and community events continued to offer opportunities to perform, and she embraced them all with grace and enthusiasm. Each performance was unique, reflecting her growth and the experiences she had accumulated over the months. The applause and recognition were gratifying, but they were secondary to the joy of playing, creating, and sharing her music. She remained grounded, never losing sight of the simple happiness that had drawn her to the piano in the first place. She also began composing her own pieces more seriously. Each composition was a reflection of her experiences, thoughts, and emotions. Sometimes the pieces were playful and light, other times deep and moving. She experimented with rhythm, tempo, and melody, developing a style that was distinctly hers. Her parents encouraged her, celebrating her creativity and dedication. They understood that her journey was about more than performing. It was about discovering herself through music and expressing the richness of her inner world. Her story began to inspire others in the community. Young children looked up to her as an example of what dedication and passion could achieve. Parents admired her focus and humility. Teachers and musicians saw her as a rare talent whose journey was a reminder that nurturing curiosity and supporting children's passions could yield extraordinary results. Her music became a symbol of joy, perseverance, and the power of following one's heart. As she continued to grow, she never lost the love for music that had sparked her journey. She played for herself, for her family, for friends, and for audiences, always with the same sincerity and curiosity that had guided her from the very beginning. She learned to balance practice with play, performance with reflection, and ambition with joy. Her talent was a gift, and she embraced it fully, understanding the responsibility and privilege of being able to share it with the world. The impact of her performances and compositions continued to ripple through her life and the lives of those around her. People were inspired by her dedication, moved by her music, and reminded of the beauty that comes from following one's passion. Her parents continued to support her, proud of the person she was becoming. Confident, kind, thoughtful, and full of creativity. By the end of this chapter in her life, she had learned lessons far beyond music. She had discovered the value of perseverance, the importance of humility, the joy of creativity, and the power of sharing her gifts with others. Her piano had become a friend, a teacher, and a medium through which she could express herself fully. Every day was an opportunity to learn, grow, and create, and she embraced it with excitement and gratitude. She understood that her journey was ongoing. There would be new challenges, new performances, and new melodies to explore. But she faced the future with confidence, curiosity, and a heart full of music. Her story was not just about talent, but about love, dedication, and the ability to touch hearts. She had taken the piano, made it sing, and inspired those around her. And though she was still a child, her music and her journey promised a lifetime of discovery, joy, and moments that could leave anyone truly stunned.